and I would like to share with you my story, which is one of the million stories behind the Venezuelan diaspora. I exactly remember the day I had to leave my country. It was June 15, 2012. I was at the airport, and a Venezuelan National Guard asked me to open my luggage. I could not let him know that I was scared. I was scared because in my baggage, besides my clothes, there were pictures, newspapers, articles, videos, evidence that I would use to request an asylum in the United States. If people had found those papers, I would probably be in prison and not talking to you today. That soldier checked twice my luggage, and thanks God and my parents' prayers, he didn't find anything. But why I was fleeing Venezuela? I didn't want to leave my land. But my dad asked me to leave. He wanted me and my sister to be free and safe. He told me that he was wounded once, and he doesn't want it to be hurt where they can really hurt him, his daughters. On February 2003, my father was in a nonviolent protest against Chavez's regime. He was shot and almost killed by a soldier. Since that day, me and my family stand against communism. During 12 years, I was persecuted. I was threatened with jail. I had to run to avoid tear gas. I had to keep silent the time a soldier pointed a gun at me. As you can tell, a socialist regime changed my life, but also changed little by little the principles and the values of my nation. I would like to give you a glance of how Venezuela was and how we ended being a total chaos. During 1970 and 1980, Venezuela was the richest country in Latin America, the strongest democracy of the area. Venezuela was one of the 4 Latin American countries certified by the World Bank as the upper middle income economy. Venezuela was a beacon of light in a region plagued by insurgency. During decades, Venezuela opened the doors to thousands of immigrants from all over the world. For many, it was the land of opportunity. However, on February 4, 1992, the most stable democracy in Latin America fell apart. A colonel called Hugo Chavez attempted a military coup in Venezuela, but he failed. Fortunately for him, and unfortunately for my country, on 1994 he was pardoned by the president of Venezuela, Rafael Caldera. On his release, Chavez traveled to Cuba. He was delighted by Fidel Castro. The Cuban dictator persuaded Chavez to achieve the power through elections. On his return to Venezuela, Chavez captured people's attention, promising a third way between socialism and capitalism. On December 1998, Chavez won the presidency of Venezuela. But how did Chavez, who was a non-traditional candidate, win the presidency? Venezuelan people was fascinated by Chavez's charisma. He was very persuasive, a master of language. With the support of many Venezuelans, in 1999, Chavez drafted a new constitution tailored to his wishes. The new constitution basically increased his powers. In the meantime, Chavez created Bolivarian circles, political non-groups which indoctrinated people. They also received guns and military training to defend Chavez's revolution. Bolivarian circles spread Chavez idolatry and a radical speech against middle class. These were the group who persecuted me and my family. Even last year, they were looking for my father. Due to all these radical changes, on April 2002, Venezuelan opposition parties called to a national protest to request Chavez's resignation. Millions of Venezuelans joined the rally. In response to this protest, Chavez ordered the Venezuelan army to activate a contingency plan to shoot and kill protesters. Some of the members of the military high command refused. Nevertheless, Bolivarian circles accomplished the order. Military high command demanded Chavez to resign. He left the government, but pro-Chavez soldiers and Bolivarian circles brought him back to power. Once back in power, Hugo Chavez realized the relevancy of controlling Venezuelan oil company, PDVSA. The company which provides 70% of the revenue of the country. On December 2002, Chavez fired the president of PDVSA and designated a militant of the Communist Party to control the company, basically. PDVSA managers and employees refused to the decision and called to a national strike. My father was one of the national managers. The strike was supported by the civil society and ended with the 18,000 employees fired. My father was one of them. During this strike, my father was also shot, but he survived, thanks God. After the protest, judicial warrants were issued against the leader of the opposition, PDVSA former employees, police officers, soldiers, and any other who opposed to the regime. Some people were incarcerated or forced to exile. TV channels, newspaper, media were also closed. In 2004, Venezuelan opposition promoted a recall against Chavez. This referendum required the signatures of voters who were included in a database that was later used by the government to identify the people who opposed him. By 2005, Chavez had an opposition neutralized, a divided society, and the economic and political power of my country. His supporters were ready for the socialism of 21st century. But what was socialism of 21st century formula? Social programs, property rights violated, free money to Cuba, and price control and overregulation. Chavez created Bolivarian missions, social programs that provide houses, subsidized food, and salary to poor people. These aids kept low-income class pleased and devoted to the revolution. The property rights were vanished. Professor of Harvard, Ricardo Hausmann, revealed that Chavez regime expropriated 1,400 companies in over 9 million acres of land. The government seized farms, banks, airlines, factories, hotels, restaurants, supermarkets, drugstores, and even houses. He also developed oil agreements with Cuba. Chavez entered an agreement to provide 53,000 oil barrels per day to the island. In return, Cuba had to send doctors, dentists, and sport trainers. Basically, he was giving our money away. The price control and overregulation. Businesses that were not nationalized had to comply with strict prices and control regulation. The government determined the price of the product despite the cost of the production and the investment. He set aside the business class. In Latin America, Chavez created ALBA, a bloc of socialist and lefty governments in the region with an anti-American rhetoric. From 2005 until 2012, Chavez repeated the same plot to annul any group or person who opposed the regime. Before his death in 2012, Chavez announced his successor, Nicolás Maduro. The socialism of 21st century was accomplished. I would like to explain in simple words what is the situation of Venezuela today. And I'll allow myself to use a phrase of Margaret Thatcher that states, the problem with socialism is that you eventually run out of other people's money. And this is exactly what happened with Venezuela. And this is exactly the issue that Maduro is facing right now. According to Harvard professor Ricardo Hausmann, on 2012, when oil price was $100 per barrel, the Venezuelan government was suspended as if the oil price was $200. In 2014, the oil price collapsed, and the dream of the socialism ended, triggering the biggest Latin American human crisis. According to the International Money Fund, Venezuela has the world's highest inflation that hit 13,000%. The value of our currency vanished. Non-official sources reveal that the price of $1 is 1 million bolívares in black market. According to the Venezuelan University, 60% of Venezuela has lost weight in the last year due to the shortage of food, medicine, and essential items. The average loss per person is 25 pounds. Venezuela is now facing, as I mentioned, the biggest humanitarian crisis in Latin America. 4 million people has left the country in the last few years. We're expecting that number to increase to 8 million by the end of this year. United Nations has recognized the status of refugee to the Venezuelans. Refugee camps have been installed in Colombia, Brazil, Chile, Peru, and Argentina. On April 2018, Vice President Mike Pence indicated that U.S. government will provide $16 million in humanitarian aid to Venezuela. And soon, socialism has reduced Venezuela to a number, to a human misery. The regime decides what Venezuelans think, what they eat, when they eat, and even when they die. The dictatorship has absolute control, and there is no internal solution to this tragedy. But Venezuelan exodus will not going to give up. Particularly, I want to be a voice against Venezuelan regime and socialism. It is alarming how many people defend and propose socialism as an option, even here in the United States. I want to make sure American people see the tragedy and the destruction of Venezuela caused by socialism. Finally, I would like to express my admiration to the Vice President of the United States, Mike Pence, the Senators Marcos Rubio and Ted Cruz, for the outstanding labor in favor of Venezuelan people. I also extend my respect to the American people for the firm defense of liberty. I dedicate my speech today to the 350 political inmates in Venezuela, especially to Joshua Holt, an American citizen jailed by the regime since 2016. He deserves to go home. He truly does. I would like to end with a phrase of the 40th President of the United States, Ronald Reagan, and I would like you to keep this in mind. This is a precise definition of what we're living. Socialism only works in two places: heaven, where they don't need it, and hell,